Hey guys, you're watching Let's Talk About Prepping. I'm Tyler, your host, and in this video we're going to talk about marijuana because it's something that's often asked about in live stream chats and comment sections, and because today is 420, which is widely recognized as the pothead's holiday. Now, I had planned on doing a full research and presentation video on the topic because I think it deserves it, but I really just ran out of time for that with my current work and home schedule. And so while I plan on doing that kind of thing in the future, today I'm just going to talk about some of the highlights and ideas of marijuana for preppers. Now, if this is your first video from this channel because you've clicked on because of the topic matter, I'd like to welcome you to Let's Talk About Prepping. Here, I talk about emergency preparedness from a slightly more rational and down-to-earth perspective than conspiracy theorists or television shows might lead you to believe. We try to focus on food and water storage and the abilities and skills to help ourselves thrive in various emergency situations or grid down situations where we can't go to the grocery stores or emergency services for help. In this context, people often want to know if marijuana and other drugs will be a help or a hindrance, and whether it's something they might want to store or be able to produce for themselves. Now, before we get into that, let's talk about what marijuana is, because some people aren't familiar with it. Marijuana is a plant, commonly called cannabis, which sometimes can be grown to produce a psychoactive substance called THC, that's tetrahydrocannabinol. Now, there are many other substances in the cannabis plant besides THC, and it can in fact be grown so that it produces a very minimal amount of any psychoactive substance. In fact, cannabis is often referred to in two different ways: the marijuana strains and the hemp strains. Now, hemp is often widely used to define both, but hemp is generally what is used to refer to the industrial uses that the plant is used for. Hemp rope, for instance, has historically been widely used in ships and various applications. And in colonial America, many farmers were required to grow at least a portion of their fields as hemp to contribute to naval purposes. Now, hemp has many industrial applications that have nothing to do with the psychoactive properties which the plant can sometimes have. Industrial hemp can be used for things like textiles, that's making clothing, making paper, making rope, fuels, plastics, medicines, and foods, and various other uses. The plant itself can be used to treat dirt for various purposes. Now, aside from the industrial uses of hemp, which have caused some people to theorize that that is largely why the plant has been demonized in this nation over the past 200 years, there are various medicinal uses that marijuana can be put to. Now, before we even get to THC, the main psychoactive chemical that is present in marijuana that gets you high, we can also talk about CBD, that's cannabinols. Those are a class of substances that exist in the marijuana plant which reduce inflammation in the body and have various other traits which some people seek for medicinal purposes. These are widely sold in states where even the psychoactive form of marijuana is still illegal because it is recognized that they have homeopathic purposes but no psychoactive uses. And this brings us to psychoactive traits which the THC and some other chemicals in marijuana can possess. Now, a psychoactive substance is something which affects the way that your brain chemistry works. Alcohol, marijuana, cocaine, caffeine, and various other things are all psychoactive substances because they affect the way that your neurons and your synapses behave. Now, some people are what is called neurotypical, which means that their neural activity in their brain is more or less what you would expect to see from your average person. These people often do not feel the need to use any psychoactive substances to obtain a state of what you might call homeostasis, or what they might call being comfortable. Some people who do have neurotypical activity have developed the desire to use alcohol, marijuana, or various other substances to supplement their natural brain activity. and yet some other people, for various reasons, do not have typical neural activity. And for that reason, sometimes they seek to supplement it using drugs like marijuana, alcohol, caffeine, cocaine, heroin, or various other things in order to achieve what they feel is a state of normalcy. And yet other people have achieved addictions through the abuse of these drugs, whether after the use of a prescription drug or through childhood or adolescent use, or for various other reasons. It's important to remember that some drugs, while abused by others, are extremely beneficial for some, and that the spectrum of abuse and benefit exists with each person, and it is as personal as morality and every other aspect of character. Now, when it comes to marijuana, it is often seen as one of the more benign of psychoactive substances. There are a lot of reasons for this, but largely it is chalked up to the fact that it is natural and that THC, the main psychoactive substance in marijuana, does exist naturally in the human body. Our bodies do produce some of the substance that exist in marijuana, and for this reason, many people feel more comfortable using it than other substances which simply mimic activities that occur in the human body. Now, marijuana has various things that are regularly not acknowledged by its proponents as being negative, but by and large, most of the things that it does for you when compared against pharmaceutical and narcotic drugs are beneficial with fewer demonstrable negative effects. And for these reasons, many people consider marijuana to be a decent alternative to various pharmaceutical drugs and to help them reduce their symptoms. But it's important to remember that if you are on prescription drugs which are designed for a certain purpose, it is not likely that marijuana will be a very feasible replacement for those, although if it's all that you have in an emergency situation, it is likely something that you will want to have around. There are not many dangerous effects from marijuana, and so from that perspective, there are not many concerns in its use and storage outside of the legal concerns and any potential allergic reactions that you might have, and the fact that if you are smoking it, you are inhaling particulate smoke matter, which may or may not be cancerous. But there is anecdotal evidence that, for instance, marijuana smoke is less dangerous than tobacco smoke. But again, that is anecdotal because official studies have not been performed in many of these areas of marijuana use. Now, when it comes to using marijuana during an emergency situation, there are many things to consider, and part of that is those who are not neurotypical. There are plenty of people who cannot function normally without some kind of aid to their brain's chemistry, and so for many people, some drugs will be necessary, and simply having no drug policies may not be very feasible in emergency situations. It will be necessary to gauge the necessity of psychoactive substance use on a person-to-person basis in a grid-down situation. Another important consideration when deciding whether or not to allow psychoactive substance use in your group during stressful situations is morality. And when I talk about that, I mean the morality of policing people in what we consider to be a constitutional society. Many people consider their personal freedoms to be of the utmost importance, and some consider a grid down or collapse of society situation an opportunity to get back to their constitutional rights, and many consider the idea of prohibition or drug control a infringement on personal freedoms. And while that may not be of the utmost importance in emergency situations where lives are on line and things are dangerous on a day-to-day basis, if things are gotten so bad that everybody needs to be ready to fight at all times, it is likely that people who have medical or mental concerns may not be likely to survive for very long anyways. But It is important to remember that medical concerns and mental health concerns will not go away during emergency situations, and in fact will likely be aggravated. And that if we're being honest with ourselves and trying to prepare for every eventuality, we do not want to take things off the table just because of social taboos or formal legal practices. If you live in an area where marijuana is legal and acceptable for you to store or prepare to grow for yourself, I do strongly advise that because there are multiple uses that the hemp plant and psychoactive marijuana can be put to. Now, when it comes to storing or preparing to produce marijuana for yourself, there are many things to consider. The marijuana plant can be complex to grow, but once you know how to do it, it can be very simple and productive. And it's something that can produce a lot of different things which are available for barter in multiple grid down situations that we often talk about, and not just for its psychoactive properties, although those will likely be very sought after in multiple types of situations. I often think about the fact that many people will be traumatized by the events that we talk about enduring, and that some people will essentially be comatose due to stress and the inability to cope with what is going on. And some substances, like marijuana, can help people to achieve a new kind of neural balance and perhaps to find neural pathways to help them deal with the new things that they're dealing with without their old and failed coping mechanisms. These are part of the reasons that things like marijuana and LSD, that's psychedelic acid, are starting to be recognized as treatments for things like PTSD. Now, when it comes to storing marijuana or the use of marijuana, marijuana is a budding plant, and the budding part of that plant is the part that contains the most THC and which is often put in a pipe or rolled into a joint to smoke. Now, the smoke and the heat is what contains and activates the THC in the marijuana plant. And when it is inhaled, it enters the bloodstream and begins to have psychoactive properties in the brain, and in the case of THC and the cannabinoids that are contained in the marijuana, anti-inflammatory effects throughout the body. Now, marijuana is not only smoked, but can also be infused into foods and oils, and also extracted using solvents and concentrated into a concentrate or dab. Now, the eaten and dabbed forms of marijuana can sometimes be much stronger in effect than the smoked varieties, and are nearly undetectable in the user from the outside. This is important to remember if you do plan on policing marijuana or if it's necessary. Marijuana can be used without producing any telltale smell or visual cues on an individual, and a dab pen can be very discreet and look precisely like a nicotine vape pen. And in fact, the infusion can be added to the propylene glycol that is used to transfer nicotine in vape pens. Now, all of these things make it very convenient for a person who uses marijuana to get their medicine in a convenient and on-the-go manner. And in fact, the THC concentrate, or dab, is one of the most efficient and convenient ways for a THC user to receive their dosage, and it's something that would be highly convenient for a bug-out bag usage or for preppers to store, because in fact, the concentrate is the most potent and in fact cost-effective form to purchase legal marijuana when buying it from a legal dispensary. Many people enjoy the flower, but it is actually somewhat expensive to purchase over the counter, and the concentrate can be produced from the trimmings that the premium flower is leaving behind at the cutting table. And for this reason, concentrates are becoming very popular among the younger crowd who are able to get a lot more for their money and use just small amounts to get them by without the telltale smell of smoke. Now, between one little dab pen and a solar charger and just $100 worth of concentrate in most dispensary states, these prices for under $200 can get a person all that they need to provide doses of marijuana for a very long time at low concentrations to those who need it in a grid down situation. Now, If you are somebody who's worried about marijuana, I would strongly advise that you do research for yourself. One of the main preparations that we can make for ourselves, apart from emergency situations, is preparing ourselves for the changing world. And I strongly believe that marijuana is widely becoming accepted as part of the next generation widely wants it to be at least decriminalized. And so I think part of our preparedness for the future should be not being outdated and being able to blend in well with the world as it grows around us. And from that perspective, I think that it's unfortunate that many people have negative and somewhat outdated perspectives on marijuana. If you have negative perspectives on marijuana and you think that nobody around you uses it, it may well be because they know not to let you know that they use it. And I don't say that in a negative way, but people who use drugs, especially illegal drugs, tend to be very cautious about who they let know about it and pretty skilled at keeping it quiet, except to those that they believe will be accepting of their use. I think it's important to at least be open minded enough to learn about others, even if you disagree with them and their lifestyle. Now, I hope that this covered at least a few bases of some of the questions that people have about marijuana. I really just slapped this together, and I wish that I could have done a better presentation of this video. If you have any questions, I will try to be very present in the comment section, and I will note them all for the future where I can cover this topic more in depth. I hope that this was interesting. I hope we got some thoughts going. If you guys have anything to share, please definitely share it with me in the comments down below. I hope you're all well out there, and if I've been missing any interactions on YouTube lately, I really apologize. I should have time to catch up here soon. Thanks everybody for watching. I hope you're doing well. Everybody stay safe out there.